The Friends School of Atlanta is beyond honored to get to host this event, to be thought of as the place that is just right for this talk tonight. At the Friends School of Atlanta, our mission is to provide challenging academics in a diverse environment, drawing on Quaker testimonies or our values of simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equity, and equality, stewardship. We empower our students to go out in the world with conscience, conviction, and compassion. And in Quaker education, it's actually very intellectually challenging. We call it challenging because here people of all ages experience deep reflection, centering silence, active critical thinking for the whole person. And we know that there is that of the light goodness in every person. So welcome. Welcome to creation of a beloved community in this evening where Adrienne Marie Brown will lead us into an understanding of loving corrections. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you to everyone from the Friends School. Is anybody from the Friends School? Do you part of the Friends School community here tonight? All right. Anybody have a child who goes here, an alum? All right. Well, welcome. Thank you for being here. We are so honored always to be in this space. We've hosted several events here over the years, and it's always nice. We were joking that this is a deconsecrated Southern Baptist church. So we're going to bring some of that deconsecrated Baptist church energy to this space. We also are going to bring the energy of the Quaker lineage of presence, honoring silence, honoring embodiment, honoring peace and justice and all of those things, and bringing that energy to children. And that's what the Friends School does best. We know at Charis that when we teach children how to be in their bodies and their spirits, we have to do less fixing the world with grown-ups. And the three folks on the stage certainly embody that ethos in their lives, and we try to do that at Charis. So my name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books. Charis Books is turning 50. Thank you. We're turning 50 November 2nd. There's some other stuff happening that week. But maybe. Nothing important. Our goal is to be the bookend for your spirit that week. So on November 2nd and November 9th, we're having two parties. You're invited to both of them. We'll also be holding space that whole week. And that is our tradition. We share that tradition with the folks on this stage of trying to figure out how to make a way from the ancestors, our literary ancestors, our activist ancestors, our movement ancestors, who are the people who have taught us how to hold space imperfectly, unevenly sometimes, messily sometimes, but with care when we don't necessarily know which way we're going, but we're going to go together, right? That's our goal. And so we want you to join us. We also would love if you support our work. So Charis Circle for all these many years has done a lot with very little. Our budget has been $150,000. Yeah. Listen, y'all, I'm not bragging about that, but I'm telling you, because we have done so little, we've done so much on so little for so long, and we're not gonna, thank you. But we also would like to not have that be our budget anymore. So we are moving into our slightly more grown era in the next 50 years. Yes, and so we got new technology where you can text to give and support Charis Circle. How many folks in this room have in some way or another been on the Charis Circle board, worked at Charis Circle? Yes. Volunteered at Charis Circle over the years. Thank you. So, in honor of those folks, take out your phone, if you would, and text 866 442 2961. You're going to text the word give. 866 442 2961. And you're going to get a text back, and it's going to invite you to give something in support of the work of Charis. You can give $10, you can give $5, you can give $500. But we really invite you to dig deep, because Charis is an institution that holds down other movement work, that supports other people going out and doing big things, and that always makes room for people to have hard, complicated conversations, no matter what it takes. And so text 866 442 2961. And if you were able to make a donation today, we really appreciate it. If you can't do it today, come back another day. You got the number now. We appreciate you, and we're very grateful. Thank you. It is my incredible honor to get to welcome these folks to the stage. I feel hopeful today because we have these folks on the stage. How many of y'all feel, it's rare to get to say you feel hopeful these days, but I feel hopeful. And I want to introduce our conversation partners first. Y'all who are from Atlanta already know them, but just in case, Charlene Carruthers on the far left. Charlene is a writer, filmmaker, community organizer, and Black Studies PhD at from Northwestern University. Candidate, a practitioner, you round up, a practitioner of telling more complete stories. Her work interrogates historical conjectures of Black freedom-making, post-emancipation, and decolonial revolution, Black governance, Black Native Indigenous relationalities, and Black feminist abolitionist geographies. Her work spans more than 20 years of community organizing across racial, gender, and economic justice movements. She served as the founding national director of BYP 100 and is the author of the best-selling book, which we had the honor of celebrating, Unapologetic, a Black, Queer, and Feminist Mandate for Radical Movements. Here. To my immediate left is Maree Hooks. Maree Hooks is a 42-year-old. You still 42? Okay, 42-year-old Black. No, I'm just making sure. Is a 42-year-old Black lesbian feminist, abolitionist, pan-Africanist mother and wife. She is a member of Southerners on New Ground and part of the leadership of the Movement for Black Lives. Her people are migrants of the Great Migration, factory workers, church folks, Black women, hustlers and addicts, dykes, studs, femmes, queens, and all people fighting for the liberation of oppressed people. Hooks has been at the forefront of fights to abolish money bail, defund police, reimagine public safety, and develop new organizers. Give it up for Maree Hooks. And y'all are here, I think, because maybe you are somehow fans of the incredible, multi-talented Adrienne Murray Brown. I think Adrienne might have a clone because she does more than anybody I know. Adrienne Maree Brown grows healing ideas in public through her multi-genre writing, her collaborations, and her podcasts. Informed by 25 years of movement facilitation, somatics, Octavia E. Butler Scholarship, and her work as a doula, Adrienne has nurtured emergent strategy, pleasure activism, radical imagination, and transformative justice as ideas and practices for transformation. She's the author, editor of several published texts, co-generator of a tarot deck, and you have cards coming around to learn more about that.
So pretty. That's
and a developing musical ritual. Now, one more thing before you give it up. Part of why Charis chose the theme of Take Root Among the Stars for our 50th birthday, which is an invocation from Parable of the Sower, is because of how much Adrienne's work has woven Butler into our present moment. And so we are grateful to you for helping us really see the necessity of Butler in this moment and how we can be using emergent strategy to really help fix this, the things that we're doing right now. So thank you for being a modern guide for us and helping us see Butler in new ways all the time. So we're going to have about 45 minutes of discussion, and then we're going to open it up for about 15, 20 minutes of questions. I'll bring the mic around to you when that time comes. So just raise your hand when you would like to ask a question. And without further ado, please welcome Adrienne Maree Brown.
We're here. We're here. We're queer.
We're very queer.
Get used to it.
Yes.
You guys, I just have to say this, I made this come true. This is my dream to be between the two of you. Y'all know, so I'm so excited. I'm satisfied.
Yes. It's an honor. I actually cannot remember the first time we met. Maybe you do. It's been a while. It's been a while.
It's been a very long time.
And we've been in conversation about many things over the years. And in the more recent years, it's mostly been over text messaging. Right?
We text a lot.
Yeah.
But, you were the person who was sitting with me when I opened a copy of Emergent Strategy for the first time in Miami in that hotel where the power went out. Remember that?
Oh my God.
Yes. You were sitting there, you're like, what's that? And I was like, I got mail here. It's kind of weird, but I have one copy of this book. Yeah. And you were there.
So I'm glad to be here with you today.
You made a baby.
I did. And so we did. And actually all did, me, Mary, and Port's baby, because she helped us. So he might join the Q&A. We'll see. So, Mary, do you want to ask the first question or you want me to ask the first question? Okay, you want me to go first? Okay. So, Adrienne.
Yes.
This Loving Corrections, I actually want to start at the end.
Great.
At the very end of the book, in the conclusion, you write that movement is not the center of revolution, but the doula to it. We must be able to see and hear the revolutionary capacity of people anywhere. We must build an internal sense of movement and justice that fortifies us and sustains our resilience and strength. This is a time to be brave in our learning and in our interventions. And then you go on to say that this may be my last nonfiction writing, at least for a while.
For movement space. Yes.
That's the next sentence.
Yes.
And it may be the last time my primary intended audience are readers who are active in movements for social and environmental change. So my first question to you is of course, why that? But if you could talk a little bit about the work that you have done in service of movement that has allowed you to write this, right? To write this text, and then also what moves you to conclude it in the way that you concluded it.
Awesome. So, I spent a long time doing facilitation work Well, first I was just an organizer, I was just like, I got politicized in college, and I've been thinking about that a lot lately because I'm like, I didn't get politicized on the internet. And I see a lot of young people now who are getting politicized in that space, and people who are just awakening right now politically. And it's like, you think that I know, babes, this is how it is. It's like they're getting politicized in the wild. Right? There's not someone who loves them and is holding their hand. I got politicized by people who love me and who were like, oh, baby girl, no, that's not how we do it, And so I did movement work. I worked with harm reductionists. I worked with the Ruckus Society, which I'm so still madly in love with the Ruckus Society, and Blackout Collective, which is now 10 years old, okay, which was a dream. Like when we were doing Ruckus, it was like, if only there was an all-Black action part, and then there was. And so I'm old enough to have things like that, where I remember thinking about something and then seeing it come into fruition. And then I realized pretty early on that the gift I had was facilitation, that the thing I could do that was unique to bring into a room was to be able to hear what a lot of different people were saying, synthesize that into something forward-thinking and visionary. I feel like I was pretty good at figuring out what doesn't matter and what does matter given the group that is here right now and what they can actually move forward. And I loved the work that I got to do. And I got to serve, I think, at some really historic moments. And then I stepped back from that work in part because of my visibility going in unexpected directions, let's just say. And it's not, I still feel like I'm in the dream world where I can come into a room like this and be like, y'all know who I am. And then I can walk 1 block away from here and people are like, can you move your car? It's the ideal scenario. Right? But within movement space, I found that I would come in to facilitate and people were orienting around what is my politic and what's my stance and what am I trying to do in the room. And I'm like, I'm the facilitator. If I'm doing my job right, you don't know what I think necessarily. You just know that you think and you're thinking together and you're moving together. So I stopped, I think 2019 was when I sort of was like, okay, I'm going to step back from trying to hold that anymore because I think I'm becoming a distraction. And then I started integrating, just sitting with so what did it mean to get to hold Positive Women's Network and Black Lives Matter and BYP 100 and Movement for Black Lives and all these things that I got to hold that, have given me hope. Every hope I have in the world comes from having been up close to organizers in that way. But now I'm not on the ground, I'm not on the front lines in that way. And there are people who are. So when I think about what I need to offer now, to me, it doesn't make sense to keep, this piece feels like it came, some of the essays in here were things that were written still when I was in those positions, when I was holding a room. And I was like, why is everyone coming to tell me how messed up this person is? But no one has talked to that person. I'm going to write an essay about that. I'm going to write an essay for white people who come into organizing spaces. I'm going to write an essay for people who smoke weed and come into organizing spaces. I want to talk about that. It's one of my favorite essays in the book. And so we'll just jump to it. This is the one thing I want to make sure I say out loud at every event is we can't all be high at the meeting. We can't. Most of us can't be high at the meeting. I say this as someone who I get high every day that God will allow me to get high. I love to be high. I understand why we need to get high in this moment. But at the meeting, we can tell that you stepped out during the break and it was a stressful meeting, right? But you came back and you're not stressed enough. You're not taking this very seriously. You're glassed over. You're not as coherent as you think you are, or you're coherent about the wrong things. You're paranoid. We are actually being infiltrated. We don't need to be paranoid right now. So, and there's CBD, there's other things to help with anxiety and other stuff during the meeting. After the meeting, woo! Do what you need to do, right? But it truly is, again, I was politicized that the role of the organizer is the most rigorous place in society. because we're doing what we do not because we're going to get paid a lot of money, but because we have hope for our people, and we're representing people who can't be in that space, who are working, who are actually working. And if they don't work, they're not going to have their basic needs met. So we're supposed to represent them in a meeting, and you stepped out and got high? Sorry, that's not rigorous, right? So anyway, I had a lot of little auntie stuff like that I wanted to put all in one place. But then I also think it's responsible to step back and make room for other folks to offer wisdom that's more, someone's going to write a great book about digital organizing that's beyond me. Like when I come to a meeting now, and I had a hilarious, famously bad time trying to facilitate a BYP 100 meeting right after the pandemic had started. And I came back and everyone had gone digital while I was away. And I came back and I was like, okay, I got y'all. They were like, it's high stakes. I got it. I can do high stakes. Okay, but they all want to chat in the sidebar. And I was like, I can't do that. I don't. So you're saying they're talking over there while we talking over here? I'm too old for that. I can't keep up. I can't keep up. So I had to really be humble and just be like, the organizing culture is going to surpass me. That's the good news. And so here's the wisdom I have to offer from that place. Now I'm trying on being an activist, which I always used to be like, activist. I'm an organizer, but I'm like, I don't have a base that I'm building right now, myself personally. I'm building a base of bookshelf, So I'm trying to I'm a member of several organizations now that I pay dues to, and I vote when we vote, and I'm paying attention to what we're doing as a block of people moving. But I think that's just being a person, right? And so the next books I write will be love stories as a person, and yeah, being a person.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Eyes retired now.
But I'm going back to something you just named, which was also a reflection I had here. What it has meant, one, I appreciate you naming the stop smoking weed in the meetings, y'all. Cut it out, friends. Cut it out. But I think that and I remember when I read that part, I was thinking, I remember being a young organizer inside of Song and having been set down, the team of us, and that being now this is what we don't do. And I remember we used to kind of, I think what was my buddy Kate over here. So I'm like, we used to say something like, fair to mainly sober or something like that. But we had some very not while you facilitated, not while these things. And then it was also etiquette in when you smoke with, who you smoke with, and those sort of things, right? And having us build some awareness, right? But I think a lot of what it made me think about was how much what it meant to come into movement with that level of accompaniment. Yeah. And someone being able to be honest with you. And give you a honest assessment and teach you how to be self-reflective. And so when I was reading your book, I said, there are some things that there's many loving corrections. And I'm like, this could have been like we need a multi-series of these. This could be a whole Bible worth of loving corrections. I hope
it's a way.
I
hope it's a way of being that people can practice.
Yeah, and I think, and that's what I was interested in. And I'm interested in because, there's things that I've been clocking, right? And I'm also like, the how. And I would love for you to demonstrate a loving correction. Can you demonstrate a loving correction? And and I have a few scenarios in mind. You know what I mean? Because I'm like,
this is an organizing training.
I love it.
So there's this one issue I'm seeing. Could you role play?
Yeah.
So
role play. The fantasy's getting more fantastical.
Yes. So we can either role play, and this one might be a little tension. We might need to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, let's get into it.
But can we role play? How do we lovingly correct what I believe as the way in which I've seen people go about unionizing in movement organization, but becomes a way to weaponize in order to not organize.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know some people may not agree, whatever, but we should talk about it because it's been on my heart.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. So, I don't know if I can role play it necessarily. I know that I can speak to the underlying question, which is how do we do this? When we get into, a lot of times the correction is needed because it feels like we're in a knot. Hi. Okay.
You love a
Yay.
good clap situation.
Okay, this is the best event that ever happened now. Okay. So a lot of times the correction is needed because we've gotten ourselves into what feels like a knot that can't be untangled. And what we do is very human, which is like we turn to like whoever the closest person is we can blame for that knot, right? And it's not that they're not involved in that knot. Okay? When you step up into positions of power, you're stepping up often into carrying the knot of how power has been constructed under capitalism, under colonization. You're stepping up and you're saying, I'll hold that knot of trying to have a staff that all have the healthcare we need when we don't have any money. I'll handle the knot of going to interact with funders who are going to suck all the life out of our work so that we can finish a grant report and a grant report and another grant report and a proposal and a proposal and a grant report. I'll handle it. I'll step up and do that. The people who step up and do that, that's not what they were called to do, right? I don't know anybody who was like, my calling in life is to be the executive of some group of people trying to change the world so that executives aren't needed. It's too naughty, right? So then the loving correction for me feels needed because if you don't have love and you're just trying to correct, you're just trying to fix, there's the fundamental piece is there's something wrong. There's something wrong with you, and I'm going to fix it. And I might break you in the process, but it's going to be fixed, right? And we do that to each other all the time. And then the loving part is like, if I love you, right? If I'm like, I'm going to hold your hand, there's something wrong. There's something that we need to hold together. And I love you, and I'm not going to leave you behind. I see you drifting from your values, and I see me drifting from mine. But I think we're trying to both face this thing together. I have a proposal for what I think could work. It would mean changing how we work, but I think it would liberate both of us. Are you open to hearing that proposal?
Delicious.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course.
Okay. So imagine like all these unionization conversations where you're connected versus, oh, you're the boss now. I feel so sad because a lot of people call me, Adrienne, I became a boss. It ruined my life, right? I've got so many of these calls. A lot of the people that I don't coach formally anymore, but a lot of people I coach are people who call and they're like, I was trying to help. Someone had to do it. Someone had to take the job, right? And I think in the next decade, next 2 decades, I think most of movement spaces are going to move into being unionized structures, cooperative structures. We're not going to stay relying on philanthropy because they're not doing right by us. And philanthropy will come our way, right? And I know people in philanthropy who are trying to do that. They're like, we see there's no way out of the cycle, so we have to break the cycle. That's their karma, that's their work, good, right? And then I think movement also has to set a direction of being like, we no longer are going to make ourselves completely reliable on those who do not benefit from us changing the things we want to change, right? Because under pressure, they're going to revert back to protecting the money. And we, under pressure, have to be like, we're going to revert back to protecting our people, and we want you to do that with us, right? So I think the unionization question is often one of saying, don't leave the person out, the person who's sitting in that boss role. Let them see their liberation tied up with the liberation of their people. But you have to love, and that's the part people want to skip over. They're like, I love correcting people. That's the only place the love comes in, right? Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. It's so fun to correct people. And I'm a Virgo. I'm an oldest child. Like, I really was made for that work. And I definitely, when I was a facilitator, would do some sideways, passive-aggressive corrections, right? And I also think that a lot of times correction, it gets done passive-aggressively, it gets done sideways, or it gets done too late. Like, it's like, well, now you're fired, or now you're canceled, or we somehow are going to get you, we're going to cut off your belonging. You fucked up, it's done. And I think for me, strategically, love is our best bet for building the largest movements possible that the most people will want to move towards. And I think we have to be in a constant practice of growth when it comes to movement. I don't think we can afford what we're doing now, which is division. You're not pure enough. You're not pure enough. You're not. You see, he started clapping. He really has a good assessment on these things. Okay. Anyway.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's some of these conversations for me, particularly the one that y'all were just having, it just like hits in the gut. And sometimes love is like lost. Feels like it's not recoverable. Heartbreak that happens. And so I did have a question about how do we correct or how do we adjust or even transform when the love is not there?
Yeah, I don't know that we can. And so, you know, I have told people this many times over the years where they would explain a work situation to me, and it could be the same situation, two different people explaining it to me. If there's no love there, I was like, you just need to leave. You got to go ahead and get yourself out, right? But Nina Simone is like, there's no love at the table, right? If there's no love at the table, then what you're trying to do is going to take more from you than you probably should give. And you can't tell because you're pouring your love out. And y'all know this from, I think romantic relationships can teach us almost everything we need to know about justice. But you know this from being in romantic relationships where you're pouring your love out to someone and you're like, now it's your turn. Now you pour back into me and then I'll pour more into you. And it's like, you're not giving me anything, but you're constantly taking. And then if that's the setup, they're going to keep expecting you to just give without receiving love or anything back. And then it starts to get transactional where you get the almost love, right? Which is like, here's recognition, here's a raise, here's a promotion, here's more weight to carry, but no love. So I'm like, you can be in another situation where there's maybe less resources, but those people love you and they love you enough to be honest with you in real time. And I want to say this too. I didn't learn this from doing this correctly. I learned this from fucking up. I learned this from like trying really hard and failing. I learned this from missing. I learned it like 2 weeks after when I should have done something different. I learned this facilitating groups and watching, like seeing like, oh, this was the moment where I knew that love was not in the room and I let us keep moving past it. And people got hurt, you know, or, you know, I think of you and I have a moment together where it was like love was what was happening and everything else should have paused. But instead we try to like, we'll do a little love out in the hallway and then everybody else will keep going. You know what I'm talking about. So, you know, there's times like that where love is actually inviting us into righteous conflict. It's inviting us into learning how to fight well, because the same as in a loving relationship, if you can't meaningfully disagree, you don't actually agree, right? You're not actually moving together. You're just people pleasing each other. So yeah, I would say it's okay. I think it's okay to let formations and let things fall apart if there's no love up in it. And I think this is why we have to protect the organizations that have been around a long time, because usually the way we last a long time is if there's a lot of love there, even if there's not a lot of functionality. So I'm like, let's bring more functionality to places where people are like, we've been around for 100 years, 50 years, we love each other. We built an institution here. We don't need to abandon that, you know? Yeah. Yeah. And then I think there's also something about just honoring heartbreak. So sometimes you can recover from heartbreak. You know, there's some people that have broken my heart and now we're friends, right? Or now we're in community together, but not everybody who's broken my heart gets to come back around. And so there's something around like, just because we've had a movement heartbreak doesn't mean we have to leave completely. It just might mean we need to find a different location to sit in. For me, I found, I'm like, oh, I can't not be in movement. I tried, you know, I was like, I'm going to go just only write about orgasms and mind my business. You know, I really was just like, I'm ready to go, you know, and I've talked to a lot of people who are like, y'all treated me like shit. You don't get any more. I'm ready to go. But the thing that politicized me in the first place is still true. I love the earth and I love the people on it. I love Black people. I love watching people who folks think are less than human show our holiness. I love that. I love when people come together and transform the future and transform what's possible. I don't think I'm ever going to get over that. And so it's important to me that movement learn how to not break everyone's heart, right? So that's what I'm trying to do.
You.
This Tony Braxton song as a book. Break my heart, say you love me again. Anyway, yeah.
Sopranos. Okay, Sopranos. But it makes me think about, and I hear this often and I say it often. We're like, you don't have to, rock with everybody you organizing with. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to.
That's true for liking.
That's true for who?
You don't have to like everybody.
Everybody.
You're not gonna like everybody. I like 3 people on earth. Y'all are both
over there. I'm not gonna count myself.
You're one of them.
I'm on that list.
No, I mean, I will say this. I'm very discerning about who I spend my time with, right? I'm very discerning about who makes me relax my system down. I need to be around people who are not constantly asking me for more labor, right? Like when people love me, I'm like, if you love me, we're going to watch basketball and get high. That's what we're going to do, right? Whatever. But there's a lot of people that I was in movement with that I was like, we wouldn't like each other in any other circumstance. We would not be spending time together. You know, I'm not a history buff, right? I'm a futurist. I'm like, I want to talk about aliens. You want to talk about 1964, you know? But we're going to figure it out. And you're the historian, and I have crushes on a lot of historians. When people can talk history to me in a way that I understand, I'm like, here for it. But I have to be honest. I'm like, there's a lot of people, and I'm like, we wouldn't like sit in the corner of the party. Do you know what I mean? But what is crucial for my liberation. And what I know is crucial for your liberation. And we both love our people. And in that space, I'm thinking about the U.S. Social Forum in 2010 in Detroit. There was one, okay? And we had one here in 2007 too, okay? We had a time. We had a time here in Atlanta. We had a time in Detroit. But I remember one of my comrades in Detroit in my face, screaming in my face. And being inside myself, being like, she's wrong. And I love her. I love her, but I'm very upset with her right now. But we're going to come through this because I love her. And I know she's yelling at me from a place of love, right? Like, you need that. You need to know, I'm like, you actually care. You're one of the people on earth who actually cares about something. I love that. So, but I do think it's not true that you have to rock with everybody. And I think that this is one of the things that gets slippery, especially with now that social media is how so many people know each other. There's this parasocial thing, and there's all these weird relationships where there's no there. Like, if you push on it, people, I ask people all the time, I'm like, y'all look like the homies. And they're like, we've never met. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you don't know where they live. Oh, okay. We don't know any middle names. Okay. So I think there's something we have to really pay attention to, because this next phase of movement is a lot of people who don't know what relationship looks like inside of movement, don't know how to date and stay in it, and all these different things. And we just have practice ground, right? But I remember I got to be in a conversation with Angela Davis, and she talked about how in 1968 and in the 60s in general, she's like, we didn't have a lot of self-care practices. We didn't have all these mindful communication, nonviolent communication. She's like, y'all have tools we didn't have. So I keep thinking this because everyone keeps being like, right now, history is repeating itself. This week, history is repeating itself. Everything is aligned. There's global unpopular war. We have a mess at home. There's an election happening. The DNC is happening in Chicago. It's all the same thing, but it's not, because we are so different than they were. And movement could be so different. I have been doing these conversations on my Instagram about this electoral moment because I freaked out a little bit. And I was like, I was off being an artist and I turned around and it's like fascism. Like, what the fuck, right? So we're going to have to get it together. We're going to have to jump back in. So I've been doing this conversations to literally calm myself down. I was like, somebody tell me something that's going to help me calm down. And the theme that's been emerging so much is that the left is actually so much more coherent than it thinks it is. There's actually so much more alignment than we understand. But social media will have you thinking that we don't know how to get along from point A to point B. But what everyone I'm talking to is like, we understand how to walk and chew gum. We understand that some people are going to have one position and some people are going to have another, and we're not going to resolve it in the next 90 days. We understand that we have to block the left, block the MAGA. We have to block the MAGA and build the left, okay? This is the strategy. They're all saying, everybody's saying the same thing. I tried to talk to very different people, from like the revolutionary socialists to the folks who are like, Kamala Black, yay, right? I was like, give me the range. Let me talk to everybody. And everyone was coming back like, you know, what we're not going to do is tell Palestinians how they need to vote. What we're not going to do is tell anybody who doesn't want to vote for her to vote for her. Do you, babe? I don't care. But as a masked strategy, block fascism. If you're trying to figure out what to do or who to organize with, block fascism every time. You're fine. You're not going to like her if you're not going to like her. She's not going to make you like her. And I love the fact that you don't have to like politicians. I gave up on that years ago. It's so relaxing. If you don't try to like them, you don't have to worry about if you like them. You just have to worry about if they respond to the pressure of organizing. That's the only thing you want in a politician. When I say what you should do as the person who pays your salary, do you do it or not? If not, I fire you. It's not that hard, right? But we like to make it very difficult because we try to act like democracy is functioning in this country. That's going to confuse you every time, right? So the other part of, I think, what movement can do and model for people right now is like, we need to be humble. This idea of blocking MAGA is like the bare minimum we can do. That's a humble stance. That's a humble stance. And I keep having these moments of, I think we're going to look back at this and be like, dang, philanthropy really did fuck us up a lot. And like, not to put it all there, but the brightest minds of our revolutionary time have been really writing grant reports, y'all. And like, we can't stop fascism while we're doing that. So a lot has to change, but this is a humble moment. If that's the least we can all try to get together and do is be like, okay, can we stop the worst here so that a few people here can keep organizing? Is that all we can do? If that's all we can do, let's do what we can do, right? And the 7 generations thinking also helps me really relax, because in this moment, it's like the worst thing that ever happened. But I'm like, every election of my adult life has been like the worst thing that could ever happen was right here. And the worst thing that could ever happen is actually happening. The climate catastrophe is happening. Palestine is happening. Sudan is happening. Congo is happening. All of the worst things are happening. They might just not be happening to you yet, right? And if you want to keep organizing to stop more of the worst things happening, then you have to figure out the decision you're going to make, and you have to sleep at night. That's all. That's all. I can't tell you what to do.
Who's next? Is it me or you, Maree? It's
I
me?
don't know, but I love it. I'm like,
okay. I mean,
I'm telling you, I dreamt of this moment.
well, let's see. Where do we want to go next? So you have this long conversation with your sisters. It is very long. And y'all talk about all the things. And some of the things that I actually think I will take with myself, like you all have these sister check-ins, right? Where if you all are meeting up in person, I think you turned them to virtual during like the height of quarantine. You all will check in with each other, and each person gets some time to just download or upload. I don't know which one it is, whatever. Depends, right? What's going on with the others, and other people, the other two just listen during it. And one of the things that someone said during the conversation, it was Autumn. Of course, it was Autumn.
By the way, who has a new album out that is incredible called The Way Your Blood Beats.
New album out.
So she released 2 albums in the last year. Okay. One is called The Animal and You, and one is called The Way Your Blood Beats. And she's a genius. I'm biased, but like the music is really beautiful.
Where can we find the music?
Everywhere you find music.
All right.
It's
everywhere.
Just Autumn.
Everywhere. Dope. Thank you.
Okay.
So Adrienne has 2 sisters that are in this interview, April and Autumn. And Autumn says that Autumn is known to be is Autumn the super honest one? okay, so Autumn is
Very
very,
candid.
very, very candid. Tells the truth, or a truth, or her truth, a truth, all the time, right? I cannot tell a lie, Autumn. And so Autumn also says that I've come to understand that just because I know the truth doesn't mean I have to speak the truth. And that really stood out to me. It really stood out to me because, in the age of not just social media, but in the age of, I think, of hyper individualism, my truth should be heard by everybody. Even the quotidian things, just the everyday. I don't like butter on my bread, and neither should you. Or I say I don't like butter, that means nobody should like butter. You know how it gets wild on social media, right?
I don't care.
Or other people think that you're telling them they shouldn't like it. But in thinking about discernment, because you also have this whole thing around accountability, how to be accountable with your words. Because sometimes I think people write books, and I complain about those books, and you could probably complain about mine on some level with this, and they don't tell you how to do the thing. So I would love it if you could talk a little bit even about like the distinction between the truth and a truth, and how do we actually operationalize the ways that and the times that we share our words and what we believe is a truth or the truth.
I love this. I know.
Let me go get that child again.
Oh, come on over, babes. Okay. Well, I think a couple of things. One is these are related. The idea of doing the sister check-in that we started doing was because y'all know how it is. You come together with your family, and I don't know if maybe this is just my family. My family is very like anticipation oriented. We're like, we got a trip. We're coming together for family vacation. Here's everything we're gonna eat. We're gonna go to the movies. We're gonna sit around. We're gonna and we come up with. We're anticipating. My parents raised us with this like unmatchable level of anticipation for everything. And so then we would get together and be like, this has to be the best trip ever. But some messed up stuff was happening in each person's life. You want her instead? This is tender. This is hard. You want to go over there? Oh! Oh my God, y'all. I don't know why we're even talking. Okay, so we're getting together. We have all this anticipation, but what we don't know is that one sister is in a massive fight with her partnership, and one sister's going through a crazy work situation, and one sister is me. So, we come together, and within 24 hours, we'd have blown up at each other. And then everyone's walking around and having the like blown up energy, which is like, maybe we'll recover during this trip. Probably we won't fully. Maybe we'll never actually talk about the thing that was really going on. So we started doing this practice, and the practice allowed the a truth thing to come forward, right? Which is like, first we would have to debrief like what happened. Like, girl, why were you yelling at me? Well, you don't even understand that, like, da 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 da. And I'm like, girl, I didn't understand that. I wish you had told me that before. I would have been like nice to you, I didn't know. But in somatics practice is where I learned to hold this distinction. And Alta Star was like one of the ones who really helped me understand it, who isn't one of our great teachers. But they have this practice where you give each other assessments. And it's literally, I think, is one of the best practices you can be in a group. But you sit and you receive an assessment from each person who's there. Here's what I know that you're trying to work towards in the world, because we're very commitment based. And here's how I see you either embodying that or not embodying that, right? And when you hear the assessment, if you're me, right, I'm a people pleaser. I was like, my whole survival is based on you thinking everything I do is perfect and the best. So if you're me and someone brings you an assessment that's like, here's how you're not, I'm like, I should give up. I'm like, why do you even do this? I'll go in my head and just start looping useful to no one, right? And Alta was like, this is just a truth. That's what that person thinks of you. They might find you annoying. They might not be able to see you for whatever reasons are happening for them. They might be heartbroken because you kind of dissed them and you didn't know. Turns out I've dissed all these people I didn't even know. I don't know. I don't be paying attention like that. Like, some people are more sensitive. There's astrological stuff going on. There's all kinds of truths happening. And if you're going into it and everything you hear, you're taking as the truth, or you're holding your own story as the truth, that's where you're going to get completely messed up in human relationships. Because the one thing I feel very certain about is that there's not one truth on this earth. That's not how the earth works. Whatever it is that we're supposed to know it because many truths are able to coexist and converge and move into something beyond what any of us can understand. When we would do those sister check-ins, we would be like, oh my gosh, we're having parallel lives. We didn't even know, right? We're all stressed for very similar reasons. Now that can actually be kind of cool. And we have a whole different kind of conversation with each other. I think one other thing I just want to add here is we also have different relationships with our parents. And there's a sense that like, oh, we all know, how our parents are. But actually, the more we talk, we're like, you had a totally different experience than I had with the parents. I was the firstborn. I wasn't allowed to do anything. I had a very different experience of them. They were learning how to do discipline. I got to be the test ground for that. There are things that they didn't experience because I did, right? And there's things I didn't experience because they did, and vice versa. The same is true in every meeting you go into, right? The relationships you have with your boss, the relationships you have with financial precarity, the relationship you have with capitalism. I'm blown away by how often people are organizing and haven't had basic conversations on what do you actually think the economy should be, or what does freedom mean? Like if you were to experience some freedom in this lifetime, what would that mean? And so we're having these high level strategic, let's move this. I'm like, I don't know where you're trying to go. I should know that. I don't know where you come from. I should know that. I should know what you think is success. A lot of times we get disappointed with each other because what seems like success to one person seems like a compromise to another. We're in one of those moments right now. There's a lot of people who are looking at this moment and they're already like, success, got it. And then there's some of us who are like, no. This is just, what we got was a breath of air drowning. We got one breath. We got to sustain this breath until we get another one, right? We have to make the next breath happen, which means we might have to stack ourselves up to underwater or something impossible. But we're making impossible breath come to our communities in a time when there's no breath, right? And I keep telling people that I'm like, I'm not excited. Hope and excitement are very different to me. I'm like, I feel hopeful that there's still a small chance that humans can have a future on Earth. That's the hope I've got. All right. And I do have as many orgasms as I can because I'm like, who knows? This might not be a thing we can do. Are we going to have time? I mean, I don't know. In the apocalyptic stuff that I read, I'm like, where are you fitting in the sex? I just cannot believe we live on an earth that is literally designed to give us abundant food and everything we need. And we have landed here. It's very frustrating. But I do feel hopeful, right? I do feel like there's a way for us. And I forgot what the question is now. Oh, the truth. So the truth, I think that's the other thing is I don't think there's one future either. I think what we're trying to keep is a multitude of futures. And I think apocalypse or creating apocalyptic conditions, it narrows down the future options. And for our Palestinian partners, our Palestinian brothers and sisters who are saying y'all have to keep it up, do not give up, don't compromise, right? They're like, we know what it looks like when there's no other options. There's no option, there's no way out, right? We still have a lot of ways out sitting here in this room right now. Our job is to make as many ways out for as many people as possible. And out can mean free, out can mean survival, but there has to be a way.
Now, yeah?
Y'all made the cutest flirty baby. Just swoon.
Every day I'm like, what is that?
I know. It's so cool.
No
And that's what you're
sense.
saying. You already know this.
Oh, still every day.
The
I'm like,
mermaid.
oh my God, Porter.
Okay.
I was eating dinner and I was like, look at these cute little kids. Look at these cute kids.
I will say that also continuously gives me hope. Is I'm just like, oh, for you, this is the best of times. That's good. Let's keep it that. Let's keep that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the questions that I was sitting with, and I would love to talk more about the conversation with you and your sisters, because, I have a
We get into a lot.
yeah, me and my sisters. I grew up with two
Yeah.
additional older youngest.
Okay. You're the
But I
baby.
have a younger sister. We didn't grow up together, and
Uh-huh,
another brother,
uh-huh,
but we didn't grow up
uh-huh.
together. But anywho, we all come from a trio type situation. So I would love to talk more about that. But I was curious about, do you see that there are places inside of our movement where there has been overcorrections?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I actually think this is part of what the final chapter is called From Fragility to Fortitude. And I think that we have developed fragility within our movements by overcorrecting for I think it's difference. I think what we're trying to do is figure out, like, it's not PC, but we need a way to hold gentleness and hold care with each other. And I think what we did was we overcorrected to the point that now people don't think they can hear a word spoken, or people have really collapsed what it means to be offended and to be triggered. I was like, if you can tell me you're triggered, you're not triggered, babes. Like, you're offended. Or you might be hurt, or you might be something else. But like, triggered is an actual state of being in which you can't really breathe and you can't really control your behavior. It's a real thing. Just like abuse and harm are not the same thing, but they are both things that can happen inside of movement space, and we need appropriate responses for them. So I think there's been an overcorrection in that regard that has left us very fragile. So a lot of times, this is also probably why I stepped back from facilitating a little bit too, was it started getting like a little annoying, Like, I was just like, y'all, like, fight, like, just have a fight. Like, you're mad at her. You don't have to call her out her name, but like, have a fight. Just have a principled struggle. Get into it. Argue with each other. You have different positions. You need to fight it out. You need to fight for what you believe in, and you need to be willing to be moved, and you need to willing to risk moving someone else. Not just being like, oh, I just can't. Oh my God. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So this idea of I think that kind of overcorrection happened. And then I think there's also an overcorrection of it's how people are internalizing what canceling looks like, right? So it's like, oh, like, I can't say anything that might get me canceled. And there's almost nothing left if you take all those things off the list. So because what can get you canceled is changing all the time, and it's just like human mistakes, right? So part of why I grow my healing ideas in public. I talk about making mistakes in public because I have enough of a platform that, like, if I make a mistake, y'all gonna know I made a mistake. And I had to just be okay with it. I've been really trying to build up this muscle of like, yeah, someone might cancel me for this. I mean, Palestine, when on October 7th, when I saw what was happening, I was like, I don't need to speak up about this. I have a stance, and I will stand in solidarity, but I don't need to like jump out on it. And I know that part of that was because I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know if people are ready to be like aligned on Palestine or not. And I'm not the expert. I'm not Palestinian. I don't know. That's how I felt inside my soul, Carter. That's exactly what it was like. But then, I was telling a story yesterday that when I was a kid, I really associated with Jonah in the Bible, the story of Jonah, who God is like, Jonah, you have to do this. And Jonah's like, no, and then you end up in a whale, and then you're like, oh man, now I'm in a whale. This is worse. So I feel like my adult life has felt like that a lot, where, I love being a facilitator. There's not a ton of risk you have to take from that position. You're hopefully holding space for the risk takers. And you're like, go take that risk. Yes. And now it's like I keep getting called in, particularly to be like, Adrienne, actually, you know Zionists and you have loved Zionists, and you know Black people and you have loved Black people, and you know white people and you've loved them, and you lived in Germany for all this time, and you understand this Jewish terror, and you know this. And then you dated this anti-Zionist Jewish person for 5 years, and you're really steeped in what anti-Zionism is and how it's not anti-Semitism. And you know these Arab organizers who will come and speak to you, and you understand why resistance is a thing, and you understand how it's been categorized as terrorism. And you understand all these things that like coherently need to be brought forward right now. So do your job, you know? And then I kept being like, okay, I think I've done enough. I did like 3 scary things. And now people are, the tide is turning, we're good. But then my heart is like shook. You know, my heart is like, no, that you'll never do enough, which I think is also a good feeling to have as an organizer or have as a movement worker. I think anything less than that is a little ego, right? You're like, I did it, I'm good. I'm like, no, we're not free. I'm not satisfied, but I'm gonna keep pushing. Yeah, so I think there's overcorrection happening there for sure right now, where people are so scared of being called anti-Semitic that they're moving against their values. And we're going to look back at this time. I'm really curious to see how the history books write about what's happening in this moment, how people write about what movement did and didn't do in this moment, where organizations were ready to take the stance that aligned with their values and where they weren't, what funders blocked people from taking those stances and which ones didn't. Like, we know all these things. And, you know, I like watching the show called Love is Blind. No, Love Island. I like Love is Blind too. But Love Island, I want to tell you how this connects. So one of the things I love on Love Island is it's all being recorded. And so people will still lie, right? They'll still be like, I didn't even say that to her. She's got bad chat, like da da da. And you're like, wait, girl, it's on film. Like, we're gonna see it. There's gonna be a film night. We're gonna sit with popcorn and they're gonna all watch you lie. I feel like that right now, right? Where I'm like, dang, this is gonna be so embarrassing for so many people, like immediately, but it's also good and clear. Like, it's good embarrassment, which I think is also part of a loving correction. When people call me out and I don't want to be called out and I'm not ready to receive it yet, I feel embarrassed when it hits me like, dang, I really put my foot in my mouth with that one. I didn't think twice. I didn't go to the people I know to read it first and make sure that it's aligned. Because when I'm fired up in my emotions, you know, I'm not necessarily like thinking perfectly. I'm like holding any kind of line. So that's how Love Island can help the movement. Yeah. But I do want to say, like, over and over again, I think the question of how is the love? Like, keep coming back to that. If it's not love, then do that. Just be like, you don't belong here for me, right? I want to be in movements where people love each other and where people treat each other like what we care about is something worth our love and worth our telling the truth in real time. And the people I most admire are people who learn how to do that and learn how to do it in ways that don't destroy the person they're talking to. That feels very important to me, that the leaders that I was shaped by, they didn't destroy me. They gave me the feedback that works like you build a muscle, right? It's like tears it a little bit, works it a little bit, and leaves it stronger. And I feel so fortified. I know the things I care about now because someone cared enough about me to intervene and have those hard conversations with me. And I'll say this, you know, for us, I feel like we're of a generation in movement. I'm 45, I turn 46 in a couple weeks. And I think for a lot of us, we didn't notice the moment when we became the generation that was supposed to be developing the next generation, if that makes sense. So I feel like we were still like, I'm still the young generation, I'm a youth. And I will just say this, when I was coming up, they were like young, up to 35 or something. It was just like really long, and it kept getting longer and longer. That was the youth, right? So I don't totally hold myself accountable for it, but I do think I was told to be a young person and act like a young person, and then I didn't notice the moment where it's like, I'm middle age, and I am responsible for what's getting passed from the Bernice Johnson Reagan era down through to this young era, right? And so I'm a little behind the curve, I feel like, in and being like, oh, I have to help you understand. I have to be a part of helping you understand like how to be in movement for the rest of your life. But I want that for folks, right? And I got to speak to the Columbia students who were part of the encampment, and it was like so exciting. They're good. Like they're gonna be fine. We just have to hella support them and be willing to lovingly correct them and get out of their way, just like we needed people to get out of our way once and lovingly gather us, right? Like that's the move of being able to be like, oh, that's more radical than because I now, I have a kid and I own a house. You're not gonna be able to be as radical as you were when you were 19, but we need to cover those who are 19 and 20, and we need to lovingly make sure that they're not turning on each other, right? That's our job. And it's a good job. It's actually really exciting to realize like, oh shit, I'm not the front line of that part. I'm not quite an elder, but I'm something,
It's a yelder.
Something yelder?
Yeah.
I don't like it.
It's the bridge between the youth and elder. It's yelder. What's
I don't
the
like
comrade who made that?
I mean,
Somebody else came up with that phrase.
Everyone, I don't know. It's not for me, but I feel like auntie. Like I'm very like auntie is really works for me. I'm like, that's not my kid. I love it. I love it. That's my spot. But yeah, I do think I want to say that to folks, anyone in this room now, most of y'all look like in that place where it's like, go ahead and start orienting to like who's coming up behind me and like how do I make sure I love them and help them develop who they are. And then how do I make sure I let them shape me as well? Like they know more than we know about gender. They understand a lot more than we did about just being in collective poly, non-ownerships. They get that a lot. They're really practicing. So let them shape you and liberate you, but also offer them some stuff like, you don't need to say that. You never talk to an elder like that, or a yelder or whatever it is you're talking.
All right, y'all. Clap it up, clap it up. Yeah.
So we're going to take like 5-ish questions. So I'm going to start right here.
Okay. First of all, what an absolute gift to see 3 of the people that have inspired me more than words can even describe and express on one platform together. I'm just elated right now. And this has been a really divine conversation. So thank you so much. My question is connected to what you were just referring to, what we can learn as younger people, especially. So I started movement work when I was 16. I'm 28 now. I'm taking a sabbatical. I'm actually on a sabbatical right now.
Bless you.
Which has been its own journey and interesting. And I have this one to thank for why I'm here. And I just was curious. You've done so much, Adrienne. Like you've contributed and offered so many gifts to the world. And sometimes I look and I'm just like, how you do all that? And that's a question people ask to many of people that are in the work in different ways. I want to know what has sustained you to do all the things that you have done and to keep you going, and what you can offer that maybe could be a gift that could help us sustain ourselves, because the conversations that you guys have had, even just in this space, about some of the challenges that we face in the work and how that takes a toll, I want us to have more conversations about what we can do to sustain ourselves. So I'm always curious to learn, and I'm always digging and asking, how have you cared for yourself and each other?
I love this question. Thank you. And happy sabbatical. Yeah. I love sabbaticals. I feel like sabbatical is when you realize like, oh, I wasn't ever supposed to be working. This is better. I'm supposed to just not be working. Let's see. I think the first thing I'll say in terms of like what sustains me is I'm pretty rigorous about being myself, and it's taken time to get that way. But I spend a lot of time being like, why am I not more like all these other organizers? Why am I not more like, why don't I write more like Toni Morrison or just James Baldwin or someone, a good writer? Like, why don't I do this? Like there was, this thing in my head that was like, why am I not something other than me? And I feel like I had to really land my first sabbatical. That was the major wisdom that came out of it, is like, no one else is you. You're the only one. And the things you do are valuable, but only if you have to be wholehearted. That's who you are. You're earnest. You're not really a good, cynical person. Like, you're earnest. you have to be earnest, you know? So there's things like that I had to be like, oh, I'm soft. So I was like, why am I not more like these hardcore hard organizers, you know? And, you know, I'm just not, I'm soft. Like, and soft has its own way of making change. So I had to really respect myself. That's been really helpful. I think the other thing is I really am obsessive about pleasure. Like, I really am like in pleasure practices all the time. And I'm always trying to figure out new ways to use them. So, you know, I think that grief and pleasure occupy a very similar place, like literally the tear ducts. Like, you know, when I have a massive orgasm, like I'm gonna laugh and I'm gonna cry, like all this stuff is gonna pour through. And I'm like, oh, I need to be using my orgasms to move through this overwhelming grief that I have right now. So my solo orgasmic practice has moved away from pleasure the way I've always thought of it. Like there's just, you know, I was like, this isn't for me. This is, I need to clear some channels that are like really massive. And that's the only way I know to do that consistently. When I write in the bath, and I'm like, I put a face mask on, I do a hair mask, I'm like, fill up the hot water as many times as I need to. I will be in there for hours. And I'm just sitting there like working on my book, but it's like, this Epsom salt is gonna take care of my lower body so that I can move this table back and forth, and I can really just take care of my body, and I can write heavier things because I'm in the water, right? So I'm like, it is gonna flow right out of here when I'm done. And maybe that's the third thing I'll offer is I really let go of what's not mine. It's not mine. I don't need it. I don't even need to know. And people will come try to tell me, bring me into, did you hear about so-and-so? I didn't. I don't know what's going on, and I don't need to know. And if people come and try to, you know, there's so much drama that people think I know, and they're like, you know, and I was like, I don't know about it. And I don't want to know that about that person, or I don't need to know that unless there's something that I need to know, that I need to hold, or I need to do something with, you know. And the same, like I've been, and my goddess friends, my close friends know this. I've been a rescue. I used to really get a lot out of rescuing people, and I'm good at that, right? I'm a doula. I'm like, I can show up and I can do the hard work for a little bit, and I can rescue you. I can see that you're in a bad situation, and I'm going to get you out of there. And it was really cool because, like, right in the first few moments of it, they're like, I love this. But then time passes. And in that passing, that person is like, I was supposed to be there. You know, like it sucked, but there's something I missed. And there's a way that you look at me now. And there's a way I look at you now. And there's something got missed, something got lost in the process. And is their karma and my karma? I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do because I was so busy trying to rescue everyone else. I've really been rescuing myself now for, I'd say the last 3 years, really like turning it towards me and being like, I have only the rest of my life to do everything I need to do, and only this body to do it in. And I'm going to rescue myself. And I'm going to so people tell me stuff now that I can recognize. I'm like, 5 years ago, I would have been like, that happened to you? I got it. Oh my God, my body really remembers how to do that. But I would do that. Like, I was like, it's so embodied, right? But I've been learning something else. So someone now will tell me something and I'll be like, I'm so sorry you're going through that. And you know what? Most of the time, that's all they wanted. They're like, could you just say you're sorry that I'm going through it so I can keep going through it and big me up. Tell me how you can see me getting through it. You know? So it's really been transforming my relationships. A lot of relationships that were requiring the rescue have slipped away. And a lot of requirements, like in myself, the way I was looking for that in others, that has also dissipated. You know, I used to be turned on by it. I'm gonna be honest. It used to be my thing. You know, I was like, you look like you're a little bit of a mess right there. You know, so I've had to literally adjust my taste. I'm like so turned on by stability now. I'm so into like people who are like, my most stressful thing is chores. I love that shit. So yeah. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . .
Hi, thank you so much for all the wisdom. I'm curious about how does apology and forgiveness fit into this framework, and like how do you ask for it? What does that look like? How do you give it? Right? Like,
Yeah.
so I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I will uplift. There's a resource Mia Mingus wrote, I think the best thing that's ever been written on how to give a good apology. And I refer people to it often. I will say that in loving corrections, an apology may or may not be part of the bag. It might or might not be part of it. Forgiveness explicitly might or may not be part of it. I think that those ideas have gotten contorted and twisted around, and so it's very hard to know. You know, we're in an era now where people will do something and they'll get called out about it, and then they'll issue an apology. And I think, I don't know about y'all, but it's made me really doubt apologies, you know? And I've even seen people, I'm like, I know this person, I know they're really sorry, but fuck that, because it doesn't feel, I was like, I don't know, it's just too soon, it's too soon. You can't possibly be sorry, it just happened yesterday, you're not sorry. You know, and I'm like that even with people I love. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I just told you I was mad. You're not sorry yet. Because you didn't even know you fucked up. I need you to sit with this, simmer. You know, for me, I'm like, I want to really feel bad so that I can really apologize from an authentic place. But I think the forgiveness part, for me, and I'll just say this, for me, with most people who have actually caused me harm, I don't need an apology forgiveness dance. I need acknowledgement and I need honesty about it. And when that happens, what I often find is I can then take responsibility for my pieces of it, whatever those may be, but I always have a piece in it. And except when I was a kid, you know, I was like, I understand that there are things that happen to me now when I was a child, and that's a part of the work I'm doing. I'm going back and retrieving all my little Adrienne selves. And so I'm like, oh, there was a place where I was too young and it wasn't my fault. And I didn't know that. So even when I was young, I was like, it's my fault, everything. But now as an adult, I'm like, there are a lot of things in which I created conditions in which harm could come my way, or I created conditions and I didn't tell people, like, you can't talk to me like that. And then I got mad that they kept talking to me like that. I got mad that people didn't know I could be angry, that I'm like, I'm very loving, but I can be very angry, and I am right now. And just because I have a little smile, that's not because I'm not angry. That's because I was socialized that I'm not ever allowed to be angry. So if I'm gonna yell at you and I'm gonna look like this, it's gonna be confusing, and fuck you, you know. But I had, you know, it's like, to me, if you can hold that, if we can have that, then it feels more real to me than the process of like, I forgive you. I'm like, I don't even know. With most people, I'm like, if you're not going to do that thing again, to me, you know. But I like to be in relationships where I'm like, I want you to know what impacts me, and I want to know that when you know you impacted me, that you can account for that, and we can really talk about it. And I want to know if you keep impacting me, I want to be able. I'm like, why am I still here with you? And let's talk about that. Like, I want to be in those kind of relationships. I'm really letting go of relationships that don't feel like they can last long, you know, because it takes time to be in accountability, I think. And this is part of why, you know, We Will Not Cancel Us, to me, felt like one of the riskiest things I've ever written or experimented in, you know. But part of it was like, we want to throw everything away so bad. And we live in a world where like everything is disposable. And so we've forgotten that people are not. And we don't build our relationships with people like they're gonna last. You know, we're like, oh, it's flimsy, I'm just gonna replace it. It's a heart. That's a human. That's someone who's like really trying hard to love you. So I want to be around people where I'm like, oh, this one was made well. They've done a lot of work to get in my presence. I've done a lot of work to be in my presence. Now what's possible? And so sometimes, you know, like, I'm very fast now. Hi. Okay, I have friends. I have friends. Which actually, maybe that's a part of it too. I've gotten very quick at being able to say I am sorry for something that's like at that level. You know, I recently, I made a joke about something in front of other people to someone, and it's something that I knew that they're sensitive about. And like, I knew I wouldn't want them to be joking back that way with me. And very quickly, I was just like, hey, pulled them to the side. I'm sorry. I know I just did this. I know that you know I shouldn't do it, and I know I shouldn't do it. I'm so sorry. I know it's something that really matters to you, and I'm not going to do that again. And boom, and it's done, right? You don't have to spend a lot of time on it. But I'm like, that's authentic. I came up with it myself. No one had to ask me for it, right? So I often tell people that. I'm like, if you think you should apologize for something, you should. Go do it. Get to it. There's not much time left.
Hi. I'm Ashe. And I wrote Love is Frazzle and Fragile. So where can the heart belong if not to self? And I've been kind of thinking a lot about two things. One, similarly, I started organizing, or just like, I would say being an activist, not even really organizing, at a young age, and being around a lot of things. And I felt really like disconnected from organizing as I got older, because I felt like I just didn't know myself, or what I believed in, or what my politic was, or who I was. And I felt like I kept trying to find that through the spaces that I was in, or my friendships, or my circles. And I felt like eventually there was no space for me to exist as a young person, and have that learning, and still like exist in movement spaces. Like when I was trying to go through that learning, I felt like shame and just like feeling kind of distant just kind of took me out of spaces. And I've been really sitting with shame a lot. And my question is, how do we utilize and disrupt shame? Because I've been learning that shame is a useful emotion. I've been in DBT, and they talk about that. It's like a type of therapy, if you don't know. But they talk about shame as a useful emotion, as like one of the original emotions. But I also have been thinking about it as a harmful emotion, and I feel like it actually is very. It just like, I feel like it just kills a lot of people's spirits. And I feel like when you do harm, or when you don't know, or when you're still trying to find yourself in your heart, it's just, you don't know where your heart belongs. Shame can just tear you down, and just make you feel like you don't have anything in the world. So how do we utilize and disrupt shame is my question.
Thank you. The thing that just popped up is you use shame when you want something to shrink, right? So I want white supremacy to shrink. I want to make people feel like I'm ashamed to be acting that way. I'm ashamed for you to think that I'm a white supremacist. I'm ashamed to have a Confederate flag anywhere near me. I'm ashamed. Yeah, I want to shrink that thing all the way down. You don't use it when you want something to grow. So I think we use it in movement, right? And like, I want to see you grow. You should be so embarrassed for having that stance. That stance is I learned yesterday that stance is wrong, and now you should be ashamed. Literally yesterday, y'all, this is what I'm talking about. The internet is not the pace of life. It doesn't move at the pace of life. It doesn't move at the pace of learning. But that's how shame is being used. And this is why I'm like, infiltration has changed a lot. But the part that hasn't, I think, is the shame part. I think that, the idea is like, how can I use shame to divide people from each other, from themselves and from each other? If I can make you feel ashamed about who you are, then you're not going to feel powerful. You're not going to come lead from that place. You're not going to step up and take a big risk. You have something shameful about you, right? And what we need right now is a lot of people who are like taking big risks. And there's actually not that much shameful about most of us. There's a lot that's human. And if there's things that are human that we haven't reckoned with and we haven't figured out how to be in right relationship with, they can cause a lot of harm. You know, I know a lot of people who have been abused and harmed in their lives, and we take on all kinds of shapes under the pressure of abuse. I don't think we need to be ashamed of those shapes, but I do think we have to become mindful. Oh, like I was abused, and so And if I don't want to keep doing that behavior of a surviving child, how do I grow myself up? Right? How do I put the shame in the right location, in the right container? But yeah, I think the biggest piece of it is like, there are things that people should be ashamed of right now. There are ideas. That maybe is the other thing that keeps coming up in this, talking about this. I had a friend who is a abolitionist, prison, you know, organizing for prison abolition, was like, what's this corrections? It's like, dang, right? Context is everything. I know. I was like, you're like, do you mean a nice prison? I was like, no. Now I'm ashamed. Shit. So, but I really appreciated it because I was like, dang, you know, everything's off at the printer. But I do think that there's something connected, which I'll try to make here, which is the ideas that we're trying to eradicate. I think they work like prisons. So when you see someone in a physical prison, you're like, oh, I can see that you're in a cage and it's limiting. You only get to walk in this little circle. You only have access to the books that might be in that library. They're not going to give you the books you actually need. You only have this kind of food and this. You think your only power is the power over maybe another racial group in this tiny context of this prison. We understand that when we're looking at a prison. We don't necessarily understand that that's the same thing that's happening with these ideas, that our folks are being born into the prison of white supremacy, born into the prison of capitalism, born into the prison of patriarchy, born into these idea prisons, and they're just walking around in a 6x9 cell their whole lives thinking that's the best thing that they can have, and that dominating one other group in the they don't call it playground in prison, what's it, like the yard. I saw The Wire, okay? The yard. But they think that's a life. And then we sometimes we can turn against them when we're actually supposed to be freeing them. So we're like, instead of being like, you're in that prison, fuck you. You would never, as abolitionists, I don't think we would do that right? But we do that all the time to folks. We're like, you're in the prison, fuck you. Instead of being like, you're in the prison, here's the little love note I'm gonna send you that could help maybe jailbreak you. That's the idea behind this book, is that you could hand this to your racist uncle, or you could hand this to your Zionist cousin, or you could hand this to someone that you love and be like, can you read this essay and can we talk about it? And can I plant a seed in you that could grow and disrupt the walls of this prison, right? And can I still have hope in your humanity? Even if most of the time, I don't go direct to MAG. I don't go direct to my opposition, people who tell me they hate me all the time. But I do still talk to people who I know talk to people who I know talk to people who I know talk to them. Do you know what I mean? And so the seed I plant has to be a good, pure seed, right? It's love. I love you too much to let you be a white supremacist in this time in my face. Not now. We're past that. That's the other thing, is this is supposed to be a time capsule of, we're in this moment. We may or may not win something this fall. There may not be a winning option for us, really, right? There may be a massive regression that happens. It's already happening. It can look like we're moving backwards. But astrology has been helping me with this. Because sometimes stuff looks like it's going backwards, but it's not. It's still moving forward. It's actually on exactly the path it's supposed to be on. But our perspective makes us look like we're looking at something move backwards. I love that. I love that metaphor. I love that concept, because we're winning. Like queer people and trans people and people who want to be in cooperative economics and people who want to be like Black land back to indigenous people. Like, we're having these conversations. We know this stuff. Young people get it. We're winning. Culture is changing in ways that it can't actually go back. You can make it harder, right? We watch this with abortions. You can make it much harder. We're not going to stop having them, but you can make us have to do a lot more work to get there. But we already know where we are. And a lot of the essays in this book are like, we're not going to go back from this. We are in a climate catastrophe. We don't believe in white supremacy. and capitalism is a dysfunctional system. This country is not a functional democracy. Let's be where we are so then we can go forward together. Yeah.
So in the interest of time, we're going to give the last word to Loretta Ross.
Oh my God.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm unfamiliar with Charlene, Adrienne, Maree, except what I've read about y'all. So I'm very, very honored to meet you. I've been an activist for 55 years, longer than all of y'all have been alive. And I retired.
And one of the creators of the reproductive justice movement that we are all part of.
Right. Thank you. It's kind of funny too, because when you get my age, people say, "What's your legacy?" And I say, "Huh? I ain't never done a piece of work because I'm worrying about a fucking legacy." I mean, ain't it obvious? But anyway.
Yeah, it either happens or it doesn't.
Right. I don't know what they measure success by, but legacy is a weird question. But I have a real question. I'm a member of the National Council of Elders, those of us who've been doing work for 40, 50 years. And one of the things that I would love to hear more about is what would y'all like to hear from us? Those of us who have done it for a career, who started the organizations that are now giving y'all jobs, you know, and I just want to say two things. I have to just say this because talking about a different generation. When you started with weed, I was like, damn, the police used to use weed to set us up. And y'all talking about smoking in their meetings. Whoa, the world has changed.
Or has it?
Right. And then the thing in the movement was that if you smoked weed, nobody took you seriously. So there was that. And then the other thing, when you talked about relationships, I said, well, damn, whether you were a lesbian or straight, if you had a relationship in the movement, you went from comrade to cunt overnight.
And cunt was bad.
So you couldn't have a relationship in the movement.
Bad, y'all. That was bad then. It's good now. Yeah, lots of things changed.
So what do you want to hear from us? Because some of the stuff we went through feels very dated as I hear y'all talk.
Well, actually, but I think this is actually one of the most beautiful pieces. To me, that's what we need to hear. We need to hear stories from here's what we did, here's what we were trying to do, here's what we actually learned, here's what worked, and here's what didn't work. Because I think that there's a way, you know, I see this happen right now where like young folks will be talking about something and I'm like, oh, we did all of that. This part doesn't work. These 4 pieces, that's not going to work. This part does actually work, but it needs this, right? Like being able to have conversations like that across generations, to me, that feels like one of the most useful pieces. And then also like, what is the perspective you have on what's happening now? Because I think that's a piece where, you know, I think this one of maybe the saddest pieces of what I've seen happen in movement is I feel like there's just been a dismissal of elders and not making movement space, not making councils of elders for each organization, right? Where it's like, oh, if you've been a part of this movement, there's going to be a role and there's going to be a place for your wisdom for the rest of your life. We don't have that right now and we need it. But yeah, I mean, I think what you just said where I'm like, I think we forget that we've come any distance at all. And if we're only living inside of the little pocket of our own generation, then I think we lose the perspective. Like, this is why I like talking to elders. You know, Grace Lee Boggs was one of my teachers and one of my elders. And at first I was like, why is everybody talking about Grace Lee Boggs? Like, this is so annoying. Like, you guys are so like on her job. And that was the language of my time. But I really was like, why is everyone quoting her in my face? I was just like, who is this person? And then I went and sat down with her. And by the end of one session, I was like, I just learned more than like a whole year of school. She had me reading. She had me thinking. She was like, that's not the first time anyone ever thought that. Read my autobiography. I thought that 30 years ago, right? And I get excited about that because for me, it actually scares me if I think I'm the first person thinking of something. I'm like, oh no, like I put this thing together and like, I don't know, it just always makes me feel like, fuck, like we're really screwed if this is, I don't have a way to implement this. I don't even know what to do with it. And then when I go back and I'm like, oh, Grace was talking about that here, and Audre Lorde was talking about this here, and the Combahee River Collective was talking about this back here. You were talking about this back here. It calms my whole system down to be like, I'm in the river. I'm in the river. It's going from the beginning of time to the end, and I'm in it, and I'm picking up the work of someone. Now, most of my partnership has been with Octavia Butler. She was alive when I started reading her work and started obsessing with her, and then she passed. And so a lot of it has been this ancestral relationship. And now I feel like that's another place of completion, where like this year I finished writing the trilogy, the fictional trilogy that was inspired by like, I was like, what would the parables look like if it happened in Detroit? And like, you know, I started playing that out. And then this tarot deck, which you all have this card for, that was inspired by her and then has evolved and evolved. And I'm like, okay, Octavia, I think I've done my job by her. And I feel like I've done a lot of that by Grace. I'm like, your name has been in my mouth. I've kept it in my mouth, right? But now I'm actually excited for this phase, to be in relationship with folks who are like, I'm alive and my work is still happening. Like, reproductive justice is the fight of this election. That's what it is. And it's the thing that's gonna, like, for people who are on the line and who are like, I don't know. I'm like, this will be a deciding factor, and we need to hear from you, right? So yeah, I think there's a little bit of both and. Like both, I wanna hear how you're still doing the work because you're not done, and I wanna hear where we've come from and what you've seen. Yeah.
Read Octavia.
Isn't she
Faye Williams, who used to run Sister Space and Books, the Black feminist bookstore in Washington, D.C., brought Octavia to Howard University and made sure we got a chance to meet her. And those are the kinds of stories we need to start telling, too. And she was incredibly shy, by the way.
She was so shy. I feel like, you know, I think maybe that's another piece of this piece around like what we need to hear from elders. We didn't have this social media fame thing has really distorted movement so much. And it's not like there wasn't fame, there wasn't some celebrity, there wasn't stuff, but it's now everyone thinks that that's the way that they be somebody, you know? And I'm like, not everyone needs a platform, not everyone needs an autobiography, not everyone needs these things. But I think that's another piece to talk about. How do we hold movement if we're not orienting towards who's gonna be the famous one or who's gonna move the celebrity pieces of the work? But I think, because I will say this, I think that there's a before and an after of this moment. I think that because we have not taken the time to figure out how to have social media platforms that belong to us, I think we have a very short window left in which we can actually rely on them for anything, including fun. So I think we have to be forming our own little spaces, our group chats and other spaces where we share these things. But I think it is actually like helping people remember, like, what is movement like when you're not performing all the time.
I think that's a great place to leave that word hanging in there. Thank you to Mary Hooks. Thank you to Charlene Carruthers. Thank you to Adrienne Marie Brown. Thank you to Eli, our interpreter. Thank you to Chris, who is helping with AV.
And thank you, Charis Books. Y'all have been nonstop love and support from day one. Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to just take 1 second.